Hi there folks, my name is Matt Davies. I'm a brand and culture strategist and I help business leaders align around what their brand should mean to their customers and their employees. I help them do that so that they can set a course to then build a really meaningful and profitable business that can grow and flourish and stand out in their marketplaces. So what this talk is all about is on this subject. What is brand strategy? When we talk about brand, we often in our minds kind of jump to the logo, right? That's the brand. We hear that said quite a bit. And if we stretch it a little bit more, sometimes we say it's a logo, a set of fonts, some colors, maybe the way that we stylize how we present our businesses or products or services. And the truth is I don't think that that's a particularly helpful definition of brand. I think there's a much more strategic way that we should look at brand, much more customer-centric way to think about these things. And that's what this talk is going to be all about. So first of all, let's get into some definitions. How would we define brand? Well, this is my definition of brand. A brand is the meaning that people attach to you and your offer. That's what the brand is. It's the meaning that they attach to you. And that could be quite a scary thought, right? Because what that says is that really you don't own that. It exists in the hearts and the minds of your audiences. It's in the eye of the beholder. Now, what you can do though is the discipline of branding. And branding is the noble attempt, the audacious attempt, the brave attempt to begin to manage the meaning. Now, of course, the first step on the way to managing meaning is to define the meaning and make sure that you as a leadership team are aligned around what it is that you want people to think about you and your business. And so that you can really pull all of your operations, all of the things that you're doing into line with that sense, with that meaning, with that essence of what you're about. And of course, the logo and the fonts, they're one way that you can begin to manage the meaning, but they're not the only way. And as you'll see as we go through this talk, brand done properly is such a super way of really gluing together your business imperatives with the way that you're doing things, your culture, and the way that you approach and you handle customers. All of this is going to be helpful, hopefully, for you when you think about branding in a slightly different way. But just think about it from a customer perspective, just briefly. As a consumer of brands, you and I know that we get drawn to brands that really start to behave as if they're humans. So they speak a certain way in the messaging, in what they say. They dress a certain way, yes, in the logo, in the fonts and the colours and the way that they present themselves. But here's some more interesting things. A brand behaves in a certain way, in the way it pays its taxes, in the way that it sources its materials. These are behaviours in the way that it treats its staff and in the way that those staff interact with each other and with us as consumers. These are behaviours kind of a business in a collective way, in a brand-led way. And ultimately, a brand does something for us. It helps us achieve something. It helps us overcome a problem. It helps us get to a desired destination. It helps us become something. It helps us build our own identities. These are all things that brands do for us. Most like the people that we have around us. They do things for us. And finally, brands exist on the basis of a set of beliefs. And that is becoming more and more important as time goes on, because we look more around not just what the brand is offering, but why it's offering it. And how it's actually going to use its profits in the world around us. These are becoming very consumer important factors. Now, all of those things come together into somebody's mind, into our audience's mind, and they will decide ultimately what meaning they attach to us. They will decide whether to buy or not, to join us or not, whether we're right for them or not. And in different markets and different products and different services, obviously, some of these things will have more importance than in others. But this is ultimately how it works. We're dealing here with the mind, with the human mind of our consumers. If we want to grow a business, if we want to attract talent to our business to help us to grow, we need to take these things really seriously, because the brand is at the heart of all of those things that we've been looking at. Your brand should influence your business culture. It should be influencing your products and your services. It should be influencing your customer experience. And it should be influencing, yes, your marketing and your communications as well. Now, this is kind of a model I sometimes like to talk about. Why is it that businesses struggle? Well, sometimes I think we have things the wrong way around. So on the screen, you can see that there's like the old, what I've called the old traditional model. And this comes out of the Industrial Revolution, where businesses had factories that could produce products, and then we'd have lots and lots of production, and then we'd run around to find customers to buy our stuff. So let's say we had a factory and it makes dustbins. Great, we set that up. Somebody set it up a while ago, but it's still producing the same stuff. We're running around trying to find customers, and what this model did is it brought to bear like the advertising culture, where we would interrupt folks and we'd push our product in front of them. We'd say, buy this, and the majority didn't, but a minority did. And so then what we did was we just upped the game. The more people we could get in front of and interrupt and ask if they'd like to buy our product, the more money that we made. In that model, that's obviously a simplified form of it, but that's how it worked. Wonderful. But the problem is over the last sort of 10, 15 years, is technology has helped consumers screen out some of this unwanted interruption. It's also led, with the birth of the internet, for consumers to be incredibly well informed as to what they're buying and why they should buy it. And they listen to each other and they look at reviews. It's not just that the power and the knowledge of that product is in the hands of the company that's making it. Now, customers speak amongst themselves. They're kind of in tribes. They move in tribes. They have belief systems in what we would call tribes. And so we've got to think about things differently. So the modern business, the thriving new modern business, has a different approach. First of all, they don't think about the product like the factory that they've got that has to produce dustbins. They forget that for a second. They start at a different point. They start with thinking about the customer, the tribe, and they select that tribe, and over time they build trust with that tribe, and they look to help that particular type of person. And then, once they understand the goals, challenges, and needs of that customer, they then produce the product or the offering. Because it might not just be a product, right? It might actually be a product coupled with a service, because that's really what the customer needs. Now, there's a really famous quote by Peter Drucker. And he says, the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. So the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. And he's absolutely right. Without customers, there's no business. So you've got to focus on the customer. And by the way, he said that quite early in the 20th century. So he was ahead of his time, and he's saying, look, we've got to focus on the customer, not on the production, not on the product, on the people that will use that product, that service, that offering. Now, that's where a strategy comes in. Now, strategy, what is that? You know, there's lots of, it sounds very high and mighty. We need a brand strategy. Well, what does it mean? Well, really, all we're talking about here is a plan to achieve something in the future. We need to set out and define why it is that we exist, what we're going to do, and who we're going to serve, and how we're going to serve them. In fact, there's a number of questions I'm going to go through with you as to why we need this plan as business leaders, particularly as we scale, as people come and go. We need to set it out. We need a plan to manage meaning. That's what a brand strategy is. And I'm going to share with you in coming moments a few tips and thoughts on what that brand strategy should consist of. What is the point of the brand strategy though? Well, as I said, we've got to look at customers. We've got to give them a good reason to decide to choose us and our offering over our competitors. We need to share with them what the reason is for them choosing us. And also, we've got to think about, as we grow, attracting employees. So our employer brand, as it becomes known, is important as well. Because if I'm a highly talented individual in a marketplace and there's lots and lots of companies, lots and lots of brands, as it were, I could go work for, why would I choose your company? Now, these are reasons to think about having a brand strategy, because ultimately the purpose of a brand strategy is to have a high level, simple plan to help you make decisions and to help customers make decisions and to help employees make decisions. It's a decision making helper. That's what a brand strategy is. Now, what should it consist of? Well, this is my view on it, and there's lots and lots of models. I'm really not a fan of having one singular model that's absolutely perfect for all situations, but here's a broad one for you to think about. I call it the brand strategy triangle. It's in my book Storyology, and this is kind of how it breaks down. There's actually like 4 main questions I think a brand strategy has to answer in order for it to be useful. Why do we exist beyond making money? How do we show up in a relevant way? Who do we exist to serve and why should they choose us? And what is our proposition and promise? These are the 4 big brand strategy questions. Why, how, who, and what? So I'm going to go through with you just to sort of show you why these are important for us to understand. And again, notice this, and I really want to emphasize this point. This is here to help align us as a company around these big things. If we don't have this, even, I've worked with a lot of leadership teams that don't even have this alignment and they're all pulling in different directions. If you have a very simple but high level and very strategic plan, this helps you then with when you get down into the intricacies of how you're going to execute that plan. So first of all, why? Why do we exist beyond making money? Remember, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him. If you haven't watched the TED Talk, start with why. But if you don't have a why, you start to find it difficult to engage with people. Even in a business-to-business environment, it's important now to know why you're doing what you're doing. Simon says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's why they get emotionally engaged. That's why they get on board. That's why they get passionate about you. They buy why you do it. You've got to know why you're doing it. You're not just doing it to make money, are you? You might have a growth target. Well, that's great for you. That's great for the leadership team that you lot want to make money and you want to grow by 10%. That's great for the board. But consumers don't care about that. And a new grad joining you will not care about that. So you've got to find a bigger reason. A better reason. Because if it's all about the money, what happens when the business stops making money? Nobody has a reason to stick around. But if you've got a purpose, if you've got a why, then what you find is people will be more forgiving, they'll break through and they'll still help you do it. How do you find the why? Well, this is a technique that I quite like to use. It's quite helpful to interview and sit down with all of the leaders on the leadership team and figure out what motivates them and what pushes them forward. It's also important to perhaps do that with the founders of the business particularly. And if the business is a few years old, sometimes it's good to dig into the archives and have a look. Why did this business begin in the first place? What was broken? So when you find why did this business even begin, you come up with some interesting drivers, like the things that motivated people, like we wanted to fix what was broken or we wanted to have a pride in a job well done. Now, these are drivers that can motivate and push a business forward and make a business begin, but they often get lost. So I like to kind of resurrect them, pull them back out, even amongst the leadership team that's kind of relatively sort of new. It's important to find out what drives those individuals as well. Once you've understood the drivers, it's important that they ladder into what I call the brand purpose. And this is the why of the brand, like why it exists beyond making money. So here, there's loads of examples that we could look at. accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, says Tesla. To be the Earth's most customer-centric company in the world, says Amazon. There's loads. Organize the world's information, says Google. Now these are big statements at the top. Now it's important that everything ladders into these statements. If somebody joins the company and they're a grad on the front desk, they need to understand what the work that they're doing and how it connects to the big why. There's a famous story. I think it's one of the presidents goes to NASA. Is it President Nixon? And he has a chat with the janitor who's mopping the floor, and he says, "What do you do here?" And the man says, "Well, I'm helping putting a man on the moon." So the janitor was connecting his work of mopping the floor with the mission, with the vision, with the why of NASA, which was to put somebody on the moon. These are powerful ideas when executed properly. The other thing I think is important to define is the brand purpose. Like what is the purpose of the brand? So take that why. The purpose of the brand is to do something, to contribute, so that there's some impact. Because, and there's the reason, there's the why, there's the nuance. Stephen R. Covey, he's a famous author. He wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. A lot of people are familiar with that, particularly in corporate life. If you've not read it, definitely read it. But one of the habits is to start with the end in mind. Highly successful and highly effective people start with the end in mind. And what they do is they think and envision where it is that they're going, and then they work back from there. And this is what he says. Begin with the end in mind is based on the principle that all things are created twice. There's a mental or first creation and a physical or second creation to all things. Now, as business leaders, we've got to have the mind of where we're going. The brand needs to have that as well. Where is this brand going? How does it see the world? So it's got a purpose to do something, but what's the end product of that? What does that look like? I call that the brand vision. The brand vision is the future that it envisions. It's the future it sees. It's the future it's trying to make real. It's the change that it will contribute towards being a reality. So, we've got some examples of this. Nourished families that can flourish and thrive, says Kellogg's. That's a vision. That's what they're looking to do. So Visa says, to be the best way to pay and be paid for everyone, everywhere. These are visions. We've got to be able to understand them. We've got to be able to excite people with them. We've got to be able to motivate people with them. This is connected to the why. The purpose is just to set out, why we exist. But the vision is to explain the big idea and how it all kind of fits together and that future change we're looking to make. So that's kind of the why component. As I say, I think you really want to end up with some drivers, you want to end up with defining the purpose, and you want to end up defining the vision of the brand. We next move into the how. How do we show up in a relevant way? And the point here is the relevance, right? But let's just pick this apart a little bit. Really, what does that mean? How do we start to define that? Well, a lot of companies call it their mission. And that's a good thing to have, the mission. The mission is what we will do every day to work towards that great vision that we've talked about, while still fulfilling our purpose. It defines how the brand's staff will go about business, and it helps them keep focused on what's important. So here's some examples. Starbucks has got a great one. Inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. Uber, make transportation as reliable as running water everywhere for everyone. Now, we might laugh at these statements, or we might not quite understand them. I mean, running water, how peculiar. In certain cultures, that might not be such a viable statement. But here's the thing. That's right for them, for their company, for motivating their people. And the mission is important because it's explaining how to people. How are we going to get a man on the moon? How are we going to fulfill our vision, as it were? Now, when you also sit in this how section and think about it from a strategic angle, I think one of the important things here is to get together, particularly with the leadership team, and define the brand's values. Like, what are the beliefs of the leadership team and the business, and what do we stand for? So we define a value, And we say we value this type of thing, we value this behavior. And the reason for that is because when you have specific rules, then everybody obviously can follow them. But no, in business life, we all know stuff will come up outside of the specific rules. And that's where values help to guide people. So they help to guide leadership teams, they help to guide staff. These are really important things if we're looking to help manage meaning. And with a value, I always think you need to explain, what do you mean by this? What does it mean that you value innovation or honesty or transparency or customer centricity? What does that mean for everybody? And you need to really kind of think about the behaviors that you'd look to exhibit that within your organization. Important thing with values is really to think about, what do we stand for? But also you could think about what we don't stand for. So the flip side is if you're struggling to figure out, well, what is it that we're really, strong about? Think about what you don't like in the industry that you're in. Think about what you would never do and start from there. Some people, some businesses I work with, they love to put together what we call a brand manifesto if the feeling is strong enough, so that we can really set out our beliefs, what we do and what we do not stand for. Now, the other thing to think about here is how we show up is super important. There's a lot you could do on this. And by the way, I would say that in all of these things, it's good to do a lot of research, both within your company and outside of your company, particularly if you're an established business, so that you can figure out how other people, see your purpose, see your vision, see your why, see your values. It doesn't have to just be a leadership thing, although what I've got to say is the leaders have to lead. They have to take charge of this initiative. They have to be passionate about it. It has to gel them together, because if they're not unified on this, it's never going to work. But the key thing also I think is important is that you need to think about how you show up from the perspective of attributes, like characteristics. I mentioned at the start that brands kind of look a little bit like and speak a bit like humans, right? So think of the brand as a character in the customer's story. Think of the brand as a personification of the collective group of people that are your company. Think about that. What are they what visual signals do we need to give off? How are we going to speak? What's our tone of voice? Yeah, what is our logo and our fonts and our colours? But also, how do we talk? How do we articulate ourselves in the verbal? And again, that could be actually training retail staff. It doesn't have to be written. There's a lot of work you can do in there to help manage meaning. One of the big tools I like to use is a tool called archetypes, brand archetypes. There are 12 archetypes based on the work of the psychotherapist Carl Jung. And what you find is that in storytelling, these archetypes, these patterns of human behavior, which is what an archetype is, it's a pattern of behavior that we can instinctively recognize and connect with. In stories they're amplified. And so on the screen are the 12: the explorer, the lover, and so on. The jester, the creator, the rebel, the magician, the hero, the caregiver, the innocent, the sage, the citizen, and the ruler. Have a look into that, because what you can do is you can work as a leadership team to figure out which of these characters, which of these archetypes are we? And then from there you can figure out, well, what does that mean in our sector, in our marketplace? What attributes do we want to be known as? What characteristics do we want people to connect with us? And then you can build a strategic program underneath that to make that a reality. The next section, obviously, as I've mentioned right at the outset, is possibly the most important. Who do we exist to serve, and why should they choose us? Right? Why should this group choose us? And who is this group in the first place? We have to define them. So first of all, we kind of have to design the customer. It's like what I said at the outset. Businesses, they shouldn't just make products and run around finding any old person to buy them. What they should do is start with the person that they want to buy the product, the person they want to help, the tribe they want to serve, and then look at their products in order to and services and offerings in order to help that group. That will get you far more loyalty, far more respect in today's market. You will attract people rather than having to push things out to them. That's why it's important you define who you are and you work with them. And you set up what I call listening posts with them so you can hear what they're saying. So who do we serve? And here's an important question. What do we want them to become? How are we going to make them stronger? How are we going to make them better? Why should they care about us? I always think it's helpful, although I wouldn't swear by it, but it's a helpful way of, it's not kind of like a scientific thing. Humans are complicated beings, right? But it is helpful to work with what I call personas, which are semi-fictional characters that represent our customer group. And the reason why it's good to define these types of semi-fictional characters is that they help teams internally, and leadership teams especially, humanize their decision making. No longer are they thinking about, a group of people in a demographic. They should be thinking about like a single mum who's struggling to put food on the table. And we call her single mum Sally or something like this. And that then triggers this more connected and emotional feel in the people that are looking to create solutions for Sally. So yeah, how would Sally feel about this? If Sally had a problem and phoned up customer service and they said X, Y, and Z, would Sally be best served by that approach? These are the things that really helps teams to humanize their decisions. I like to kind of define personas. This is just a helpful framework that I invented. 6 persona Ps. The past, what's their past? How have they got here? What's the present? What they're doing right now? What's the pain they've got? What's giving them grief? What do they believe in? What's their psychographic? And where are they going? How will they judge our performance? And ultimately, what is the key problems that we can solve for them? These are the big questions I would suggest that we need to think about in terms of personas. Now remember what I said, the old push model, the old advertising model was to create a product, push it to prospects, and the business would heavily promote it. And by the way, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for advertising. All I am saying is that it's not the best place to be if you're constantly relying on pushing your stuff out to people, because they can screen it, right? But the new pull model is to get to know your customer, design valuable experiences with them, give them useful information, help them. And then what you'll find is that if they have a great time, they promote you, they tell stories about you, they invite their friends, and that is how you scale. So the other thing to think about in this space is, what is different about you? Remember I said you're going to show up in a relevant way. Why should this customer choose you? And that often comes down to how different you are. Do you know your point of difference? What is your unique selling points? What makes you different, not just good or slightly better? Why is it different? What feeling does it give that's different? What actually does it deliver that your customers can never deliver? Why is it different? So for this to be really effective, your brand strategy, you have to be relevant in a different way to your customer. And if you understand your customer, you'll know that actually you might not be competing with the typical business sector kind of way that we sort of slice up markets at the moment. You might be competing with laziness, right? So how do you get someone to not sit on their sofa watching something on their television anymore? You might be competing with that to get them out to go to your sports venue or something. But if you had a traditional business model, you might be looking at it thinking, well, we are this sports venue, and so we're competing against other sports venues. No, if you get to know your customer, you might realize you're competing against the television or the internet or the other modes of entertainment that people are going through. And so now you're in the mindset of the customer. You can start innovating and creating your messaging, your offering, and all of the things around your actual tribe, rather than what you think you know from a book, if you like. It's a bit harsh, but you get the point. So, final thing, what is it that we do? This is about knowing really what you're promising. This is about knowing what your proposition is. So brand's value proposition is the reason it will be attracted to its audience. It's the promise of value to be delivered, communicated, and acknowledged through everything the brand does. And so we've got loads of examples. Let's take Uber again to be the smartest way to get around. You want to get around, come to us. We'll get you around. It's the smartest way. MailChimp, which is an email program, it allows you to send mass emails. Send better email. It has to just be super simple. Sometimes the simplest ones are the best ones. Spotify, Soundtrack Your Life. Really love that. So think about concisely articulating your promise, your purpose, your value proposition. To do that, you really need to know your audience. You need to know what they're looking for. You need to know what they need. And then you need to sort of make obviously sure that you've created stuff that meets that need. But then you need to be able to easily and concisely promise it. All of that needs to go packed in to your brand strategy, I would suggest. And if you've done that, just moving into our outro now, you will know you'll know why, how, who, and what the brand is. And that is just the beginning. That is just the start of really managing meaning. This is the first step. Because as time goes on, you need to hold yourself accountable to this. You need to build mechanisms, routines into your processes so that you don't just say these things. You live them so that other people, your customers, your tribe, they say them about you. Because remember, the brand is the meaning they attach to you, not simply what you say. And as I say, this should then just be the beginning. It should flow through other strategies, other plans that your business has. So once you've defined that as a leadership team, your brand strategy to simplify decision making, you'll move into other things if you're doing it properly. Your commercial strategy, obviously. Well, you need to grow the business. You need to sustain the business. Why? To make loads of fat profits? No, to help the tribe, the customers. Profits will follow, yes, but the focus, I would suggest, has to be on the customer. Remember Peter Drucker? The purpose of the business is to create a customer. Without that focus, in a few years, you'll have no business. Communication strategy. I talked about the archetype. Well, how does that flow down into how the brand actually communicates consistently and effectively, both within and without the organization? What about your sales and marketing strategy? I call this your smarketing strategy. In other words, what is that? Well, it's a strategy that will basically help you acquire new customers. And obviously you've got your messaging and your comms there, but when somebody walks into the store, when somebody phones up, when somebody messages, how are you taking them through a process to enable them to become a customer? And how do you make that such an enjoyable and value-packed experience? Do you give away information? These are the things you need to think about. What about your customer strategy? Once they sign up or become a customer, buy the product, how are you going to look after them? How are you going to delight them? What if they've got a problem? How are you going to deal with that? What about your people strategy? So this is now within. What's your onboarding process like? Your training, your development to make sure that your employees understand this. What routines, rewards, or reminders do you build into the calendar of the company? So that's designed and considered so that your people grow and flourish and are inspired, because your employee experience is ultimately going to relate to your customer experience. So you've got to build that in. You've got to have that on the go. And what about your innovation strategy? How are you listening to customers? How are you then creating new products, new services? How are you modifying and innovating the processes that you have in place so that you create the best experiences? What I'd suggest is you need to start simply with all these things, but you need a very simple plan in all of these areas. And then as time goes on, you can build on them and grow them and really kind of add complexity to them. But here's the thing, folks, all of those strategies need to ladder up, I would suggest, into your brand strategy. You need to manage your meaning. And so I hope you found this quite interesting as an explanation as to what a brand strategy is. It's a plan to manage your meaning. And also hopefully you found it enjoyable in terms of some of the ideas and the buckets of kind of things that you might want to start to define as a leadership team. There's obviously, I've shared with you some information here that's obviously copyright to me, but there's lots of information out there. Feel free to dig around and have a look. And I have a lot of free stuff on my website. My website is mrmattdavies.me. I consult all over the world. I do some fantastic, even though I do say so myself, brand strategy workshops, which I help I use to help leadership teams align, and I take on kind of longer term, sort of 6 month plus strategy kind of contracts where necessary. I've also got a book, so feel free to dig into that. That's got some very simple processes and steps that you could actually take some of these ideas into your leadership team and begin to work through with them. And I also have other kind of online training and so on. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope that's been useful, and take care and good luck managing your meaning.